Welcome, everyone. My name is James Mancini. I'm a principal solution architect and one of the original founders of Netreo. And today we're going to be talking about ways to handle managing IT remotely, as well as dealing with the surge of remote worker traffic that's caused by the current worldwide health crisis. If you think of any questions during the presentation, please make sure to enter them into the questions section of the GoToWebinar interface, and we'll be sure to answer them for you. So some of the challenges our customers are experiencing due to the current crisis may be familiar to many of you. So let's take a look at what we're facing, and then I'll share some of the solutions we've been able to create for them. So operational challenges, things like dealing with outages while IT is fully remote. A lot of companies rely on an on-site knock or help desk presence that isn't possible to maintain right now. The sudden surge in the number of remote workers has completely changed the type and direction of traffic on the network. And this can include not just changes to the way we're using our internet links, but may also include major changes to our VoIP traffic and how we access our internal applications. Obviously, this will put a lot of added stress on our internet and VPN infrastructure as well. And it can be difficult keeping up with the rapid pace of changes required. Some of our healthcare clients are doing things like deploying mobile remote clinics, for example, and those need to be monitored and managed, even though they're changing and growing rapidly. So dealing with the operational challenges that the current crisis has created is driving a new set of best practices. Many of them are things we can implement fairly easily. Things like limiting your notifications to critical items only. This isn't new advice, but it's especially important in a crisis situation, as the increased level of activity and potential difficulty of mobilizing resources means that too many alerts are worse than just noise. However, we still have to maintain visibility into the performance and availability for our key applications. Now more than ever, we especially need the ability to monitor them from multiple locations outside our immediate environment. We'll also need to consider how we're handling and routing those notifications and alerts, and exactly when we need to be looking at particular notifications or data. We also recommend creating a dedicated remote work dashboard so you can keep a close eye on how things are going. So let's dig into each of these items a little bit deeper, and then I'll show you how to quickly implement them in your environment with our platform. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that we're only getting the alerts we need. So the best way to do that is to make sure that we're reserving active alerts for what we call actionable items only. So if you're not going to react to a notification as soon as it comes in, you shouldn't be alerting on it. For example, if you're getting alerts when hard drives reach 90% utilization and then you're just ignoring them because it's not that urgent, two things are going to happen. First, sooner or later, you're going to get a server failure because you forgot to circle back on that alert before the drive filled up. And second, you're conditioning yourself and your teams to ignore alerts, and someone someday will inevitably ignore the wrong one, and you're going to have a major problems on your hands. So instead, what we should be doing with those kind of notifications is to configure reports. So for example, every morning I get a list of servers with the lowest free drive space, and I know if I deal with the top entries on that list, I get to sleep through the night. I never have to get to the point of getting that alert. The same concept can apply to most of the different kinds of threshold items we're monitoring that aren't business impacting. But a key point for success is to schedule and automate those reports so that nothing gets missed. We'll give you a very easy way to accomplish that in our platform, which I'll demonstrate shortly. But first, let's look at a few examples of alerts to see what's really actionable. So if I get a high CPU utilization alarm, is that actionable? Well, probably not. I mean, are you going to drop everything and go do something about it? Well, maybe if the CPU has been stuck there for a while. So the way we approach that is to allow you to set a delay for those types of alerts. So for example, it won't generate an alarm until it's been over 95% for some length of time. If your SQL server pegs the CPU, that's probably normal and I don't want that alert. But if it's been pegged for 30 minutes, I might have a job I need to go kill. What about a switch port going down? Is that actionable? Well, if it's plugged into something important, generally yes. So this is a good candidate for an immediate alarm. But what if it's part of a port channel or it's just one server in a large cluster? That might warrant a different priority or a different method of notification that doesn't require a drop everything and fix this response. So we need to consider that when we're setting up those kinds of alarms. What about an internal application going down? Well, that's generally a big yes, but you might also want to try automating a response first. So for example, you can have Netreo try to restart that service or reboot that server to restore the service faster. Now let me show you how to create and automate a report so that you can keep informed without getting bombarded by alarms. So the first thing I'm going to do, this is a live system, and I'm going to go in and generate a report. So we talked about CPU. That's something I want to keep an eye on, but I don't necessarily want to get alarmed on it. So I'm going to create a report that looks at all of my server CPUs And I'm going to pick that by a business workflow in this case, and then I'm just going to select CPU out of that menu. It's going to give me options for what unit I want to use, and then finally I get to pick which variables I want to get alerted on. And I'm going to include both Linux and Windows systems in the same report here. Now it's going to generate a prototype of that report for me, but this probably isn't the way I want to look at it. So I'm going to change the format of that report to look at, say, last 7 days, and a stacked histogram is a good visualization because it helps me find outliers really fast. So I'm going to create that report. Now, this is going to pull that data from the database in real time, and I can immediately see what's going on in this report. I can interact with it. I can turn different variables on or off. But if this is the view that I want, all I have to do to turn this into a scheduled report is to click the schedule button, and I can either add it as a page to an existing report I already have, or in this case, I'm going to make a new report with this as the first page. And I'm just going to call this one server CPU, and then going to create that report and add that page to it. I can then go into my custom reports list, and I can enable a schedule for that. So if I want to go ahead and have this sent out, I'll go ahead and enable that schedule. I'll put in my email address, and then I'm going to say, I want to get this, let's say daily at midnight. And every time it runs, I want to see the last 24 hours as a PDF. And now that's it. I'm done. I've scheduled that report. It's going to show up in my mailbox every day. And now I don't have to worry about getting those alarms. I can set those alarms to a much higher threshold because I can still keep an eye on what's going on in my environment with those reports. Now, part of managing notifications is also considering how we get them. So we need to be able to reliably communicate what's going on to all of the different teams and stakeholders during a crisis. And this isn't new either, but the current situation is really highlighting this for a lot of companies. You should give some thought to exactly how we're going to get those notifications to people. Minimizing the alert noise, like we looked at, is an important step, but especially considering that it's easy to miss things in email and SMS is very interruptive, these aren't necessarily the best choices. Only the most urgent alerts should be sent out via SMS, and if your email infrastructure is having issues or if there's a mass outage going on, it might be slow or saturated with alerts or unavailable. So we need to look at alternatives. We could do things like integrate with APIs into team communication platforms like Slack or Spark or Yammer or something like that to make sure all the members of the team are aware of what's being done, when, and by whom. And this also creates a very nice log of communications after the incident. So if we're doing things like post-mortem root cause analysis, it makes that a lot easier and helps with that a lot. We should also consider things like mobile app push. So we provide a iOS and Android app for free that allows you to get this data directly from your Netreo tool. So let me show you what that looks like. So our approach is to make it very simple to leverage the mobile application. So we developed a patented security architecture to make sure that you can access your internal data on your system from anywhere, even if your Netreo is deployed entirely on premise. It just needs basic HTTP access to the internet. And to use it, it's as easy as switching on cloud services and live data. So the mobile app then gives you a full view into all of the different performance and incident data, including the ability to go in and generate graphs and reports, and it supports mobile push notifications as well, and those take an entirely different path from email. Those are even initiated from the cloud side, so the state of your internal networks or systems won't affect those notifications. This will also enable a heartbeat monitoring system that will alert you if your Netreo instance loses connection to the cloud for any reason. So you can get notified if your internet goes down completely, for example, which you might not necessarily know right away if you're not on site. If you're using the cloud-hosted version of our product, this will be enabled by default. We also recommend centralizing your alerting to reduce alarm noise because this accomplishes a few things. Duplicate alerts and conflicting status coming from multiple tools can confuse engineers working on the problem or lead them down the wrong paths and delay resolutions, or even kick whole troubleshooting efforts into action from teams that aren't necessarily related to the problem. It also provides a single point of acknowledgement and a single truth that everyone can work from, which helps to eliminate information silos. And this also helps to reduce parallel troubleshooting. So if you've got multiple teams trying to diagnose the same problem and nobody's got full visibility, it can lead to a lot of wasted effort. By looking at the whole stack in one place, we can make sure problems are routed only to the teams that are best able to resolve them and not duplicate efforts. We should also make sure that we're leveraging our other operations systems that we have in place. For example, integrating with notification managers can simplify on-call schedules and provide a way to distribute alerts that isn't dependent on internal mail infrastructure, for example. Many organizations are also going to be using a ticketing or ITSM system like ServiceNow, and you'll want to make sure that we have integrated that So we know how we want to use those tools during a crisis and how to integrate them with our monitoring and alerting systems. We should also consider integrating our monitoring system with our CMDB and inventory systems if we haven't done that yet, because this can help make sure that new systems are monitored quickly. And it also helps by making sure that things like decommission systems or configuration changes don't trigger false alarms. Now, as I said earlier, it's key that we're monitoring our critical applications, whether they're hosted in our data center or in the cloud. And we've made that easy to do by using what we call web application response time monitoring, or WebArt. You can create synthetic checks to monitor your internal applications or cloud-hosted SaaS applications like Office 365, Zoom, or Salesforce. And you can launch these checks either from your own Netreo appliance if you're on-premise, or you can leverage our network of cloud-hosted web reflectors to launch these checks from various locations around the country and around the world, making sure that your remote workers have access no matter where they're working from. Now, the way we do it, no scripting is required. It's a very simple interactive wizard that kind of steps you through the process of fetching the web page and validating that you're getting the correct page content. And then it'll just start benchmarking that page for performance on an ongoing basis, as well as sending alerts if something goes wrong or if the page performance becomes unacceptable, or even using anomaly detection if it's behaving abnormally for that time of day or that day of the week. We can then add all of those into a remote work dashboard so we can see everything in one place. Now, for internally hosted applications, we also recommend using system or event logs to monitor them for health. Now, we take a slightly different approach to doing this than a lot of products in this space, in that we give you the ability to watch the log data statistically. And what that really means is that we can watch for unusual log volumes, looking for anomalies in the data. So rather than having to create keyword matches for every possible log or error message, for example, just looking at the total logs per minute on an application server can tell you a lot. Even if I don't know exactly what those log messages are, if they suddenly go from 100 per minute to 1,000 per minute, I can be reasonably sure something unusual is going on. And using that anomaly detection, maybe that search is normal at 8 a.m. on a Monday, so the system doesn't alert. But if the same search happens at 3 p.m. on a Thursday, that's an unusual occurrence, and the system can notify me so I can investigate what's going on. You can also monitor systems down to the level of individual process, CPU, and memory usage on our platform. So you get good forensic data about what might be slowing down an application or competing with your Java runtime for memory. Or you can just set it to alert you when a process suddenly uses an unusual amount of CPU or memory for that time of day or on that day of the week. And all of that functionality is built into the platform and doesn't require any agents to be installed. So it's very easy to quickly implement if you're not using it yet. Now, speaking about a remote work dashboard, there's a few things to consider including in that view to make sure that it's useful for you. So one of the things we recommend doing is tagging the important interfaces for remote access. And this probably includes things like internet links, but it should also include internal connections for things like VPN concentrators or firewalls, and maybe even some of your WAN links if they're likely to be impacted by the change in traffic patterns. You can even tag server interfaces if that's where you're seeing increased load. And once those interfaces are tagged, it's trivial to create a view of them on your dashboard. You might also want to include some specific interface detail for key interfaces like the internet links. And you should include some overall status data like the business workflow views. So if you've already set up an application grouping for security or VPN devices, I can populate those directly on the dashboard as well. And beyond the infrastructure level, this should also include detail on key servers or application status or process status. The whole system is designed to be very easy and highly customizable so you can make it work exactly like you need. Let me just quickly walk you through what that looks like. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tag my serial ports on my routers. So I'm going to mark them so we know that we want to generate a report from them. And I'm just going to go to my administration tool for this. And let's pick my infrastructure grouping. And now I'm going to pick all of my devices that are routers. In this case, they're all marked R1. So now it's going to give me an opportunity to create a filter for which interfaces I want to tag. In this case, I'm going to tag all my serial ports so I can look at all them together. And then it'll give me a list so I can pick specific ones if I want, or I can just select everything in the list and then create a tag. I'm going to add this tag called VPN. So I'm going to add that tag to those interfaces. And now that those interfaces are tagged, I can very easily go in, and when I run those reports, I can just run that report to filter by tag so I can pull all those interfaces up together. So I can say, show me everything, all the bandwidth on all the interfaces that I've tagged for my VPN. And again, I've got the same options for changing the format. If I want to look at them a different way, or if I want to look at them over a different time period, I can easily do that and pull all that data from the database live. But to turn this into a dashboard, what I'm really going to want to do is edit my custom dashboards and create a specific dashboard for remote work. So I'm going to go into custom dashboards here. And in this case, I'm going to add what we call a generic dashboard as opposed to a site or category specific one. And I'm just going to call this one remote work and create that dashboard. Once that dashboard's created, I can actually go in and switch it on so it shows up in the menus, and I'm going to edit that dashboard. And basically can just drag and drop the different widgets that I want to see on that dashboard there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with that WAN interface that I created there. So I'm going to grab what we call a top talkers widget and put that on the dashboard. I'm going to grab let's do a histogram so I can see my critical interfaces there. I'm also going to go in and add a couple of web response ones so that I can look at how those applications are performing. So I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of widgets here for my web applications. So I can put my critical web applications up there, and then I'm also going to include an overview of my business workflows. So I can put my critical applications on there. And this is just an example. Obviously, you can do whatever makes the most sense for your environment. Once you have those widgets in there, I save the dashboard, and then I can set the options for each one of these. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and say, I want this to be a custom group here, and I'm going to include my security and my VPN groups here. Let's see. Right, okay, and then I'm going to go for that top talkers, and I'm going to run this one again by tag so I can pull up those interfaces. So I'm going to tag everything with VPN, and this is going to be bandwidth for last 24 hours as a stacked histogram. Save those options, and then go in here, and I just have to pick which application I want to view here. So I'm going to set this one to Office 365, and then I'm going to set this one here to Salesforce. And then lastly, I'm going to include a specific device in here. I'm going to go in here and drill down into one of my interfaces, or I can go in here and look at one of my particular routers. In this case, I'm going to grab a router port, but you can do any interface you like on those devices. You can even, log graphs for things like CPU or memory or other things like that if you want to. But in this case, I'm just going to grab an Ethernet interface just to give a good example there. Now, once this dashboard is all saved, I can go in here and preview this dashboard, and it's just going to generate that view in real time, so I can make sure that this is what I want to see, and it's showing me that the data that I'm interested in seeing. If I want to put this on a monitor and just keep an eye on it somewhere, I can also instantly turn that into a slideshow. So I just click the side view button, and it'll go through all of those modules I just added to the dashboard and just essentially swipe through them page by page. So it's going to give me the full screen version of these, which might include a little bit more data or larger graphs. And be able to go in and see exactly how those different applications are performing from a response and availability perspective, just so I can keep an eye on the environment. And I can just put this up on a monitor, my secondary monitor at home, so I can kind of keep an eye on how things are running across the environment. I can also go in here and then assign that dashboard to a particular user. So if I want to go in and map that dashboard so that becomes their home page when they log into the tool, I can actually go in here and edit one of my user accounts here and just say, based on this particular user, when he logs in, I want to make sure he's got the remote work dashboard at his home as his home page. So you've got the ability to quickly generate those dashboards and then assign them to users so that becomes their homepage if you want to when they log in. And you can customize those. They update in real time, and you can even set the default refresh rate so it can continually update in the background for you as well. Now, there are some good options to help us tame the current chaos. Since everyone is scrambling around right now, a little control would be a nice change. So a bit of preparation here is going to go a long way towards making the next few months easier for us. So one of our top recommendations is, if you're not already doing it, make sure you've got your firewall, VPN, routers, all those critical devices set up for configuration management. That's included in our platform at no extra cost, so it's a fantastic capability to leverage for this kind of a situation because it allows you to set up real-time change alerts as well as build a complete audit trail of all the configuration changes. So if a change I make causes a problem, I can troubleshoot it easily, and or I can undo those changes later if I need to. It also allows us to push configuration out to those devices so we can schedule and centralize important changes, like adding my home address to the access list used to control consoles access, for example. You can also use this to leverage configuration policies, so I can make sure the configs are applied everywhere they need to be, and later to alert me where they need to be changed, or even automate the process of removing them automatically once things settle down. You can also use our built-in logged SSH gateway to centralize all the interaction with the CLI devices through your web browser. So this can be a powerful backup way to get into the devices. If I'm remote and don't have my laptop, don't have my SSH keys, I can use a web browser to launch an interactive SSH session, or I can also use it to manage access to those devices to keep an accurate record of who made what changes and when, to improve my operational security and to help troubleshoot problems. Some other considerations you might want to keep an eye out for in your own environments, things that we've seen. The first thing to keep in mind is that the traffic patterns in the environment have likely changed a lot. And in a lot of places, that might have drastically changed the direction of the majority of my traffic. It may have flipped everything 180 degrees. So I may suddenly find that I've got bottlenecks appearing where there weren't any before. You might also consider having to adjust your threshold settings, or if you're using our AIOps autopilot, you can let it make the threshold adjustments for you to accommodate those changes and to cut down on the alerts that you're seeing. It's also important to consider that this might require you to make some significant changes to your QoS policies. Depending on where your applications are hosted and how you're getting to them, you can use the QoS tab that automatically appears on router dashboards in our tool to watch out what's going on with the QoS configuration. So pay special attention to things like the queue and policing drops and the queue depth to make sure that it's behaving the way you want. But also keep in mind that it can be very difficult to apply QoS to external inbound traffic effectively. We should also remember to revisit the way our redundancy is configured. So some of our customers previously didn't consider remote workers to be fully mission critical, so they had limited redundancy for things like VPN concentrators, and that might be something you want to address quickly. You may also already have had to increase the number or size of your VPN systems, so be sure that you're monitoring those for load and connected users and things like that, so you can know how you're doing and know when you need to add additional capacity. Now, let me just share a few more best practices to keep in mind. You might be having to make dramatic changes to your infrastructure to deal with this situation. Make one change at a time and track all of the changes. Whether these are changes you're making to accommodate remote workers or in response to restoring a service outage, it's important to keep track of the changes, because I may need to revert a change if it makes things worse or it causes a problem. And if you're making multiple changes at the same time, you're going to have a much harder time figuring out which change caused the problem. When you are working on fixing an outage, obviously you want to focus on restoring service first, but list out possible root causes as you come across them, because this becomes important later when I'm doing my postmortem in order to prevent that problem from occurring again. I also want to ensure that the configuration information is documented and maintained throughout those changes, because I need to be able to see if there are changes that may have caused the problem, and afterwards find out what changes were made to resolve them. Reverting a change is often the fastest way to restore service when we're making a lot of these dynamic changes, and dynamic changes like this can often inject new defects into the system. So I want to be able to keep a close eye on that and use a tool like our configuration management tool to be able to do that. Now, we do have a small announcement today. With a large part of our installed base in healthcare, we're very thankful for the many of you who are in the front lines of COVID-19 care: hospitals, emergency services, medical device manufacturers, research facilities. And in order to cope with the pandemic, many of you have been taking extraordinary measures to cope with the surge in demand for medical services. Like a lot of our hospital customers are converting hotels or establishing mobile clinics. So effective immediately, as a contribution to the frontline efforts, we're making our product and the services required to implement it available at no cost to any frontline healthcare organization of any size, to assist with getting the IT visibility you need to extend your mission critical infrastructure and monitor these temporary locations. Existing customers, regardless of industry, can also get temporary surge licenses to accommodate their management needs at this time, along with free services and best practice guidance to help implement them. So if you need any help, please reach out to us for more information at info@netreo.com, or respond to the poll at the end of this webinar and we'll get in touch with you that way. For those of you who haven't worked with us before, let me just take 1 second to tell you about us. Netreo has been around for 20 years now, with a proven track record in both public and private enterprise and a customer retention rate of 98%. We have a number of key industry awards that validate our approach, including winning Monitoring Product of the Year award from Network Computing UK for 4 years running, and we're currently a finalist to make that 5. We've also won awards for ease of use and customer support, and made the Inc. list of fastest growing companies for 3 consecutive years. So now I'm going to take a few minutes to address any questions that you have. So please enter them into the GoToWebinar interface if you haven't done that already. And I'm also going to launch a poll. So if you'd like us to follow up with additional information or discuss your unique environment, you can let us know that way and we'll get in touch with you privately. Okay, let's see here. So first question, is a high temperature alert on the equipment available as a choice? Say if the AC unit goes down in the network center and causes the room temp to go up. Yeah, we can absolutely monitor that. Typically, with a something like an AC unit, if it is network connected, we're going to be able to monitor it directly. Or if you've got temperature sensors like a NetBots or a temp pager or something else that's in the data center, we can monitor those. And those are typically more accurate ways to monitor environmentals than using the built-in temperature on things like routers, because a lot of times those are influenced by the router's internal airflow and temperatures, but we can track those too. And UPS devices are another one that typically has temperature sensors on board. So you can watch all of those for sudden changes or rises. But when you're setting the thresholds, you want to keep in mind what's normal for that device. Like a router, a router temperature sensor might always say 80 or 90 degrees because of the heat coming off the CPU. And we'll just want to make sure that you've got your temperature settings correct for that. Or you could use anomaly detection to detect when those suddenly spike up and change. Next question. I do not see the custom menu in our platform, which is a version 12.1.7. Do we have to update the version? Actually, what I would suggest is contact support and let them walk you through the process. You can certainly update the software, but if it's not in the menu, it might be a permission setting. So give customer support a call and they're more than happy to walk you through that. The next question, did the free license also apply to local government? Yes, it absolutely does. If you've got monitoring needs and want to get it set up, please do reach out to us again at info@netreo.com, and we're more than happy to get back to you on that and help you get that set up for you. All right, thank you for joining us today. I hope you've learned some useful things to help you manage your way through this historical event. As always, if you have any additional questions or if you're interested in taking advantage of our free licensing and services offer, please contact us at info@netreo.com and we'll be sure to get back to you right away. Have a great rest of your day, everyone, and please stay safe.